Hello there everyone. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to do this beaded Kumihimo braid with a tiger print, and this is what mine looks like. So you get your tiger print all the way around, kind of random looking there. Then obviously you got your clasp. I just used Kumihimo ends to finish off the braid, so it looks like this. So in this case I just made a bracelet length, but the way that I designed this pattern, once you look at the pattern itself and set it up, is that you can actually just take this pattern and then duplicate it just right after each other. So set the beads on like I show you, but then start from the beginning, set all the beads on the same way again, and then repeat that however many times until you reach the length that you want. So for instance, if you wanted a necklace with this pattern, you could just, if you wanted say 3 times or 4 times the length of this, you just make the same pattern and repeat it on your lengths of cord. Obviously you'll need longer lengths of cord as well, but that's the way I designed this Kumihimo pattern here, so you can easily just do that. So extend the pattern without having to worry too much about how to place your beads. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet, this Kumihimo pattern with your beads, then stay tuned. So these are the materials that we're going to need. Now first of all here we have our round Kumihimo disc, because we are making a round braid. And then the cord that I'm using is a 0.4mm Eslon. This one is just a black colour because it will be a nice simple background colour for my beads here, and it's going to be nice and strong as well. The beads that I'm using, these are both 80 seed beads. I'm just using Miyuki ones. Now specific colours here, the specific colours that I'm using, the black ones are just opaque black, and then also the orange ones here are matte orange AB. But these are just the colours that I'm using. You can obviously change them out if you want to give a different look. Finally, we got the Kumihimo ends, and then whatever findings and clasp you want to use. So I'm using a lobster claw clasp, extended chain, and some jump rings. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So then what we need to do is get our cords ready as well. And what I have here is 6 lengths of about 1 meter each. So we're going to be using these to make our braid. But what we're going to do is then put the ends together, all of them here, because we need to find where the middle is, roughly. And what I've done in the midpoint here is just tied a regular overhand knot just to keep all the cords together. But this is also going to be the starting point for our disc, because what we're going to then be doing is folding all these cords over. So each one cord is actually going to turn into 2 working lengths. So we're going to end up having 12 lengths for our braid instead of the original 6. So this is going to be a 12 strand braid that we're going to be doing. So this is the cord we need to use. We need to get that ready and then now attach this onto our disc. So this is then how you want to set up all your cords on your disc here. Now what I've also done is just attach a scrap piece of wire to that knot in the middle and just use that to help pull my braid through. You can also use a Kumihimo weight or anything else. It really is up to you what you find comfortable working with. So what I've done is distribute all my cords here as equal as I can around the disc. So in my case here, I'm not bothering worrying about the numbers or anything. There's no reason, no point in that. It's just going to probably confuse more than anything. So what I've done is I put 2 cords, 1 on each side around the top dot there, and then 1 on each side around the bottom dot. And then on the sides, I've just basically put them in pairs as evenly as I can on the disc. So in this case, I've gone 3 slots in between. So count 3 empty slots, and then in the 4th and 5th one from the top, I place my another pair there, and the same from the bottom, 3 empty slots in between, and then another pair, and the same on the other side as well. So this is just how I've set it up to make it as easy as possible to work with. But then to start making the braid, it works in the exact same way as a regular round braid does. We just have a few more cords than the basic 8 strand braid, but otherwise it works the exact same way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with my top left one here. I'm just going to start with the 2 pairs in the middle. I'm going to take the top left one, bring that over the middle of the disc, over that hole in the center, down and stay on the left side of the bottom pair. Then I'm going to take the bottom right one, bring that up over the disc and stay on the right side of the top there. So now these 2 pairs, you can see they're kind of moved over a slot. So what I'm going to do is turn my disc to the next pair that I run into, and I'm turning it in this direction, so basically going towards the right of the disc. Then I'm going to take the top left one from this next pair that I'm at now, bring that over and down, stay on the left side. Going to take the bottom right one, bring that over and up, stay on the right side there. So now these pairs have moved 1 slot over. turn your disc in the same direction to the next pair that you run into. So that's this one now. Take your top left one, bring that down, your bottom right one, and bring that up. And then that's that pair. And then you just want to keep doing this, so turn your disc in the same direction again to the next pair that you run into. And you just want to keep doing this. So what we're doing now is building up a bit of braid before we start adding in any beads or anything, because I want to use that little end of the braid, I'm going to do that on both ends as well, to be able to finish off the braid, in this case a bracelet, at the end. So just have the braid here without any beads on, so we can finish it off with our Kumihimo ends nicely. So what you're going to do is keep doing this, make a little braid of about 1 to 2 centimeters, and then once we get there, we then need to then start adding in our beads. So now that I've kept going here and I have this little about centimeter or so of the braid, then what we need to do now is add in the beads. So I'm going to then show you how I've done the setup to achieve the pattern that we want. So I've now added all my beads onto all my lengths of cord here, and this is then the setup. So as you can see, the pattern on all these cords is quite random, so there isn't a set pattern going through the lengths of cord here on some of them, because the pattern itself on the braid is kind of random looking, so there's not a set pattern running all the way throughout. So therefore, I'm not going to go through every single length of cord here with the setup of the beads in this video, because that will be quite tedious and just quite boring. But what I have done instead is taken a picture of this whole setup, and then I posted that on my website, and you can go there and have a look more detail at the picture. You can see the setup, but I'm also going to have written out the way you need to set them up, so naming all the lengths of cord and then naming and writing out the beads and exactly the pattern that you need to place them in. So you can go there and have a look on my website. The link will be down in the description box below the video. But what you could also do if you don't want to go to my website is simply just pause the video and either have a look here, or pause the video and then actually take a screenshot of it and then look on that screenshot itself. So it's completely up to you which one of the two that you prefer, but either way I say go and have a look at the picture or the screenshot that you're going to take to be able to see the exact setup here of the beads that I've done to achieve the final look of the braid. Now one thing you just have to be aware of as well as you're setting up your beads here is that this setup of these beads is to accommodate for the way that I work with my braid, and that will be, I always start with my top left one, bring that down, then take the bottom right one and bring that up. That's just the way that I naturally work with my braid. But obviously people work in different ways. Now this specific pattern that I've made suits either starting from the top left or starting from the bottom right, because those two are exactly the same, because when you look at it they're working on the same pair, and I just take my top left one first and then the bottom right one. Whether you do it the other way around, take the bottom right one and then the top left, that doesn't matter at all. But if you were to start with the top right one or the bottom left one, you would have to set up the beads in a different way than this, because otherwise the final pattern on the braid wouldn't end up being exactly the same. But once we then get all that in order and you set up all the beads here on your lengths of cord in the correct way, what we need to do now is continue the braid but then add our beads into it as we go. So to do that, the basic principle is to continue with the way that I showed you before, where we just make the braid. So I'm due to take my next one here, the top left one of this pair, these two pairs, but then every time now we move a cord across the disc, we also need to drop in a bead to be able to get the beaded section of the braid here. So what I'm going to do is take the very first bead from the top there, the cord that I'm going to release next, release that one bead as I'm releasing my cord, let the bead drop down into the middle of the disc, just like this, and then what you need to make sure of is that that bead in there tucks underneath all the cords that are crossing over in the middle. So it might do that by itself, or you might just have to push it down with your finger. But then bring the cord down the exact same way as before, place it to the right of the bottom pair, then we need to take to the left, sorry, of the bottom pair, then we need to take the bottom right one, release one bead as I'm releasing the cord, let it drop down. Make sure you tuck that in right there in the middle and then place it on the top. So you can see the braid itself is exactly the same. We're just adding in a bead every time we cross over a cord. So that's the only thing that's different really. Turn your disc to the next pair and then that's this one that I'm working with. That's one thing I want to mention as well with this braid, because it's a 16 strand braid. You have to always make sure that you're turning it in the same direction. So I'm turning it this way, which you also have to do. So it's kind of anti-clockwise how you're turning the disc here. I'm always basically going towards the right of the disc, because that's the only way as well you're going to achieve the same pattern, otherwise it'll end up differently as well. So I then take my top left one, release your bead as you release the cord, let it drop all the way down, tuck it in and then bring it down. And the bottom right one, release the bead as you release the cord and let it drop down all the way into the middle there. Now it's the same basic principles here as when you're doing a beaded 8 strand braid, but obviously we have more cords going on, so it's just a little bit different to work with, but just take your time and it'll work out fine. As you can see, it's the same principle when you're bringing in the bead into the braid, you tuck it into the middle. Like I also showed in a tutorial that I already have, where I go into detail about a beaded Kumihimo braid. That's just with 8 strands instead. But the basic principle is the same, like I said, we're just working with more cords. And then you will find it's a little bit different, because obviously that means we also have a thicker braid in the sense there's more beads around the braid, because we got more cords here. So once we get a little bit further on, we just need to make sure that whenever we bring in a new bead and bring across a cord, that we have the right placement within the braid of those. So I'm just going to keep going for a little bit and then show you that and explain what I mean. So what I mean with that is, because you have a few more beads within this braid rather than the 8 strand braid, you'll find, it'll probably have for me to show you, but you'll be able to see it when you make your own hair, that your beads are just a little bit more, you have to be more aware when you're adding a new bead here. So I'm going to take this, I've dropped my bead down, release my cord, then what you'll find is you need to make sure that the cord itself, because in a way it naturally just kind of wants to come on the outside of the braid, because it has to come in between some beads to be able to slot this new bead into place. So what you just have to do is pull it a little bit, make sure it nestles in between the beads, and then the new bead sits on top of those beads that you've just gently pulled the cord in between. And that's really the only difference, because we have those extra amount of cords and beads. You just have to make sure of that. So drop down the bead and then just gently pull the cord a bit so it nestles in between the previous beads, and then you can place it in like this. So this is what you have to be aware of, and not just kind of keep going and just adding in beads and then you maybe look back and you'll find that your braid hasn't become as tight as you want it to be, because you didn't just tuck in that piece of cord as you were adding in the beads. So you just want to make sure to do that throughout, otherwise you just continue like this, adding in your beads all the way until you used up all your lengths of cord here with all your beads obviously. So once we get to the point where we don't have any more beads left, then I'm going to show you what to do. And obviously just remember to be aware of what I said, always turn the disc in the same direction. So I'm turning it this way, always to the very next pair, use that, turn it that way, always to the very next pair. So just make sure to remember that, because if you do turn it the wrong way, it's going to end up messing up the pattern on the braid at the end. So now that I kept going here and I've used up all the beads and all my lengths of cord, my braid is coming out of the back looking something like this. And then what we need to do now is make a little section at the end here again of just braid with the cord, just like we did at the beginning, just so we have a place that we can then finish off the bracelet. And to do that, all you want to do is keep going with the same braid. So I've gotten to my next pair here that I'm due to take, and then instead of just adding in beads as we go back to just making the regular braid just with the cord. And just remember, the first time you go around here, you still have those beads where you need to just pull your cord in between them so the cord doesn't end up on the outside. But then what will happen is your cord here, the braid, will naturally singe in and become a thin braid just like at the beginning. And that's just what we want, so we can then use that to finish off. And like I said, we need about a centimetre or two, just about the same length as we have right at the beginning. So keep going with that. So now that I reached that point where I didn't have this little section of braid, what I want to do is just secure the end of the braid in place before I take it completely off the board, because we obviously don't want it to unravel as we then continue to work with it and we're taking it off. So what I'm going to do, the last pair that I just used were these two. So I'm going to take basically the one that was due to use next. So the last one that we used out of all of them. And then I take cords that are diagonally opposite each other from those two opposite pairs there. Take them across the middle. Tie a regular knot. And then tighten that knot all the way down right at the end of the braid there. Then take the other cords from the same pair. Again across the middle. Tie a regular knot. And then just tighten that down across the middle, the end of the braid, and then move on to the next pair. Do the same thing, take cords that are diagonally opposite each other, tie your knot, and this just secures the end of the braid in place nicely. So we can first of all take it off the board securely without the braid coming undone, but also we're finishing it off without too much bulk on the end, because we're kind of making the knots towards the end of the braid rather than making one big knot with all the cords, because I want to just finish off the end here so I'm not adding too much bulk, because we need to be able to get it into the Kumihimo end that I'm going to be using. And then the last ones, because the Kumihimo ends that I'm using, they just fit the end of this braid just perfectly, so I don't want to add too much extra bulk to it. Just like that, and tighten it all the way down, and then we can take it completely off the board. So there we go, and it's nice and secure. Now what I will just do before I can keep working with this, we always get all these cords excess at the end now coming out from all the knots. What I'm just going to do is take a bit of glue, get it all the way around here, and then as it's drying, then I'm going to cut off all the excess cord. So we then have a completely finished end on this end, ready to go into the Kumihimo end. And then on the other end, I'm just going to take off the wire that I used there, the scrap piece of wire. Once you've then done that, we've got the ends ready to put into a Kumihimo ends. And I've already got a tutorial where I show how to do that, so just have a look for that in the description box below if you want to. I'll put a link down there to show you how you can finish off the ends nicely with the Kumihimo ends. And then obviously add your clasp, and then once you've done all that, so finished off the ends of your braid here, then you can start using it as a bracelet. So then once you've added your Kumihimo ends here on both ends of the braid and your clasp and extended chain if that's what you want to use for your locking mechanism, then here you'll have your finished bracelet, obviously after you let the glue dry as well. So this is the pattern that you get. So a really nice tiger print pattern here. It's kind of random looking, but then obviously you just use your clasp to close your bracelet up, and then there it's ready to wear. So that's how you make this bracelet. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this beaded Kumihimo bracelet, and what you have is little hedgehogs or porcupines, whatever you want it to be, going all the way around looking like this. So on the inside of your bracelet you can have the underbellies, so it's also nice and comfortable to wear, and then you have your hedgehogs or porcupines up here depending what you want it to be. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching.